there, it's none of my business, I know, but I couldn't help but notice, looks like psychosis. Life on relationship blow, what's going on over there? It's none of my business, I know, but I couldn't help but notice, looks like psychosis. We live on relationship road.
Colin in number 1 is remembering the invitation and lovely meal that Sally did for them a few weeks ago, and he is feeling guilty. Since that evening he has made a greater effort in their marriage, and they have taken a few walks together and have discussed making some changes in their garden, as well as making plans for the next summer. Once again he thinks to himself, had Sally become suspicious of him? Had she guessed that he had been having a relationship with someone else? Colin refuses to call this relationship with his work colleague an affair, because he thinks that sounds too sordid. He's not that kind of guy, he tries to tell himself. I'm glad we've had the lockdown, he thinks. It was a good time to end it with Joanna. We couldn't go on like that. I never meant it to go that far anyway. It was just a bit of harmless flirtation last year. It was the office party early in December that changed things. Colin can't help smiling a little to himself when he remembers the first kiss between himself and Joanna, followed by the night they spent together in the hotel. He had thought it was sensational at the time, after drinking too much and laughing together at the stupidest of things. Colin had never done anything like that before, and he despised himself for letting the situation get out of control. But Joanna had been a hard woman to resist. She was about 10 years younger than him, and she knew exactly what she wanted. And on that fateful night, she had told him exactly what he wanted as well. Looking back now, he realizes that she had been determined to make him want her. He hates himself for being so weak, as without very little resistance, he had let her lead him to her hotel room. He hadn't had to do anything. She had been all over him, and she had made it very clear that she wanted him that night. Colin had felt such remorse and guilt the next day, but Joanna had said all the right things, and he went along with everything she said because it made him feel less of a shit. They had met in secret a few times, just for lunch or a drink after work, but they had not had a sexual encounter since the party. Colin knew what he was doing was wrong, and it was a mistake that he wanted to put behind him. At the first opportunity after the Christmas break, Colin had made it clear to Joanna that they would not be seeing each other again. However, Joanna had appeared to be devastated by this news and insisted that they meet again for lunch, so that Colin could prove to her that he hadn't just been using her. Colin now felt trapped. He didn't want Joanna making a scene in the office, and so he agreed. Better to end this over lunch than in the office, he thought. Oh, how he wished he had never been tempted. But it was impossible to change the past, so he knew he must end it now completely. Joanna had always known that this was a short-lived thing, so he was sure that she would be fine with it once he explained things to her again. However, things didn't go quite the way that Colin had thought. Joanna had got quite aggressive with him. He remembers with horror their last conversation as they left the restaurant. Joanna, I have told you before, you are a wonderful person and the time we have spent together has been amazing, but I don't want to ruin my marriage, and you are young. You need somebody nearer to your own age. Joanna looks at him straight in the eyes and tells him, You are who I want, Colin. We were made for each other and you are not happily married. If you were, you wouldn't have slept with me. Now either you explain this to your wife or I will. What? No. I mean, what are you saying? This was fun and wonderful, But we didn't have a future together, Joanna. You knew this. You said yourself on the night of the party that this was just a bit of fun. Those were your very words. You can't tell my wife. You must not tell my wife. It would destroy her and destroy our marriage. Joanna laughed at him and said that she was just joking with him. But the look in her face told a different story. Colin was very worried and didn't know what to do. No one at work knew about these liaisons with Joanna, and he wouldn't want to confide in any of them anyway. He had taken a few days sick leave, though Sally was not aware of this, and he had gone to the woods and sat in his car and tried to work out what he should do next. Joanna had called him numerous times and she had sent him texts as well, but he hadn't answered her calls. Finally, he sent her a text to say that he wasn't feeling well in the hope that she would leave him alone. It worked for a while. He went back to work and was grateful to find that Joanna had been sent on a course and wouldn't be back in the office until the following week. And then the coronavirus erupted and the lockdown came. Never had anyone been so grateful for a killer virus to emerge. Now all Colin had to worry about was his phone. He blocked Joanna's number and prayed that she would stay away, as people had been told to stay at home, and as far as he knew, she lived a pretty long way from him. At first she had sent him lots of emails, but they gradually stopped, which left him feeling slightly less anxious. However, this isn't stopping him from worrying. Every day he worries that Sally will somehow find out. He is terrified that Joanna will come to his house. Once again he thinks to himself, does Sally know something? Has that wretched Joanna got in touch with Sally somehow? Probably not, or Sally would have made it clear that she knew what he had done. Maybe he had been acting different and Sally had got suspicious. Why, oh why was I so stupid? I love Sally and yet I slept with Joanna. What the hell was I playing at? Oh please God, don't let Sally find out. What am I going to do? I hate myself right now. Sally doesn't deserve this. Olive in number 4 is busy preparing to bake a cake for Peter and Alice next door when she hears Peter shouting. She calls Dan and goes to the front door. Peter, what on earth has happened? She asks Peter, who looks frantic. She's gone, he says with horror in his eyes. She's gone somewhere and I don't know where. He is trying to hold it together, but Olive can see that he is beside himself with worry. Dan comes to the front door and Olive quickly explains what has happened. Right, says Dan, taking control of the situation. You go back home, Peter, and Olive will come and sit with you and wait for Alice to come back. She will probably find her own way home, but in the meantime I'll go down the street and see if I can find her. It's no good all of us being out there in case she comes home on her own. Olive leaves her baking, turns the oven off and puts on her shoes and goes with Peter next door. How about you make us both a nice cup of tea, Peter, says Olive, trying to give Peter something to occupy his mind. She doesn't really want a cup of tea, but Olive thinks that an act of normality will help him to calm down. Yes, okay, Olive. Sorry, where are my manners? I'll put the kettle on. And with that he makes them both some tea. Once they are both settled into the chairs by the front window, Olive thinks that it is now time to ask Peter more about Alice and her mysterious disappearance. So, Peter, she says as gently as she can, what were you and Alice doing this morning? Can you think of anything that might have made her want to go out? I've been racking my brains over this, says Peter. These days we pretty much stick to a regular routine, as the doctor thought that it would be helpful. You know, a way to prevent Alice from getting too confused. And it does seem to have helped. 90% of the time, you wouldn't really know that there is a problem. Most of the time, she doesn't even seem to need the notes we put up in the kitchen and bathroom. But then out of the blue, She might have a day where everything seems a bit off. I asked the doctor if that was normal, but she said that dementia can affect people differently, so she couldn't really say much more than that. Peter begins to look troubled again. Was today one of those off days? Asks Olive gently. No, not at all, says Peter. That's why I popped into the garden and wasn't overly concerned. Alice was sitting where you are now, and she was listening to the radio and doing a word search. I was probably outside for about half an hour, and I thought I'd just better check on her, and his voice wobbles. She wasn't there. I called out, but I got no reply, and so I went to check the other rooms, and that's when I saw the front door was open. I thought she must have gone into the front garden, but she isn't anywhere. Peter visibly crumples in front of Olive. Peter, she says firmly, she can't have gone very far. There's every chance that she simply popped over to the shop or has just taken it into her head to go for a walk. Dan is out there now, and I'm sure he will find her and bring her home. They both look out the window in the hope of seeing Alice or even Dan coming back. If you have something you would like to share or a concern you would like addressed, please send it in and we will try and incorporate it into the future storylines. Tune in again for the next episode of Relationship Road.
Welcome to Relationship Road, where people live just like me and you, alone or together in all kinds of weather, and most of them are scared of this flu. What's going on over there? It's none of my business, I know, but I couldn't help but notice it looks like psychosis. The pressure's starting to show. What kind of neighbor am I? Am I doing my bit for the road? My parents are elderly, my children disorderly, the whole world is suddenly slow. What's going on over there? It's none of my business, I know, but I couldn't help but notice it looks like psychosis. The pressure's starting to show. And if you need me, let me know, and I will be the first to show. What's going on over there? It's none of my business, I know, but I couldn't help but notice it looks like psychosis. The pressure's starting to show. The future, well, nobody knows, but we'll do our best till then, I suppose. I've got my friends and my family, no place that I'd rather be. I'm learning to go with the flow. What's going on over there? It's none of my business, I know, but I couldn't help but notice it looks like psychosis. The pressure's starting to show. And if you need me, let me know, and I will be the first to show. What's going on over there? It's none of my business, I know, but I couldn't help but notice it looks like psychosis. Life on Relationship Road. What's going on over there? It's none of my business, I know, but I couldn't help but notice looks like psychosis. We live on Relationship Road.